Welcome to the iLearn, Therefore I Can podcast, an iRIZE performance consulting production where we explore the dynamic world of performance through a learning and development lens with a focus on achieving excellence. I'm your host, Lonnie Gregory, and I'm inspired by those of you that wish to be better at what you've been asked to do. Introducing myself is always a fascinating endeavor, reminiscent of that awkward interview question. Tell me about yourself. There are countless facets to consider, leading me to ponder which version of myself to present. Should it be the present me, shaped by contextual and often transactional engagements tailored to resonate with the person I'm conversing with or having a conversation with, or perhaps it's the past me, adorned with carefully selected triumphs, hidden failures. Then there's the future me, a blank canvas, waiting to be painted with yesterday's experiences and today's vision, colored by the aspirations that strive to embody. Ultimately, conveying my identity is a process of decision making and self awareness. It's an evolving target, actually. Sometimes clear, sometimes ambiguous, but always thought provoking. Uh, Thanks to the insightful conversations with many of you, my peers and friends in the field of development over the many years, I've gained a deeper understanding of myself. As of now, I feel more certain than ever, or more certain than uncertain, and I'm eager to share the person I perceive myself to be. Now, perceptions can be foolish, but that's where I am. So, if this is your first experience with me, please know I'm glad to make your acquaintance. And to my friends inside the industry, thanks for your support, for your participation. I need you. To my family, thanks for the love and the likes on Instagram. And before I move on, because I wouldn't even be here without this person, I got to share my deepest appreciation for the incredibly unselfish, encouraging, resilient, and talented Coca Lorraine Vera. Friends, you'll hear about her and hear from her as this conversation evolves. Very insightful person. I learned I could count on Vera, therefore, I could launch this podcast. She really helped me. One of my defining characteristics is being a first generation American, born in the Bronx, New York, to Edward and Lucille Gregory classical Jamaican parents. Growing up, I navigated the challenges of straddling two distinct cultures, balancing the rules of the street with those of my home. And by home, I mean my aunts, uncles, my cousins, and other family and friends who are also Jamaican or from some other island like Puerto Rico or Trinidad and Tobago or Barbados or Cuba and even Haiti. Back then, the Bronx was full of diverse people. There was no mad rush to the suburbs to escape urban plight. I went through school with every conceivable type of kid from every conceivable background you can imagine. This experience contributed and helped to shape my perspectives and influence my personal life and career choices, which I'll get into a little bit later in the podcast over time. I'm blessed to be the little brother, that's Patois for little brother, of the best sisters on the planet. I'm also a proud father of three cherished gifts and a grandfather to four dreams come true. As a tested introvert, I find solace and derive energy from my own company, a trait that has its advantages and disadvantages, if you know what I mean. Additionally, I'm an Aries. Now, I'm not sure how relevant that is, but I'm told I fit the description perfectly. I'm a proud U.S. Navy veteran, having served in the Navy, where I discovered my life's work and my passion. And most of all, I'm an internal optimist. Not only is there a silver lining, that silver lining is threaded with gold. Most importantly, I'm committed to lifelong learning, believing that learning matters, performance, right? The ability to carry out, accomplish, or fulfill an action, task, function, goal, or dream counts as much as anything else in the world. So here I am exercising my ability to perform against a dream, to perform against a goal. Now, there was a point on this journey to launch this podcast where I started to doubt myself. The iCanots, you'll hear about those later on. I can nots were talking to me. The published YouTube channels, the impressive LinkedIn posts, the millions of likes and views and impressions to concern myself with on multiple social media channels. The lions, the tigers, the bears, oh my, they were getting to me. They were frightening me. I was about not to do this. I was experiencing imposter syndrome. That feeling of not being good enough and doubting my abilities and experience. I worried about being credible and relevant. I worried about being deemed foolish. I'm not in my 30s. I'm not a young man. I invested time, energy, resources, and capital. Was it going to be for nothing? Deep down, really, I just worried about being accepted, not liked. Well, you don't have to like me, but would I be acknowledged? One of my favorite words, by the way, for what I was doing. Some of you understand what that's like, and not because you've experienced yourself, but because many of you write about it. You coach on it, you consult because of it, you train on it, and you encourage people like me to get over it. My friend Coco encouraged me. Frankly, she threatened me if I gave up. She reminded me of a lesson that I learned several years ago that I'd wish I had learned it sooner. This podcast and what I aspire to do isn't about me. It's about this development industry, what it does, how it does it, and who's doing it. It's about the practitioners who spend a lifetime honing a message, developing a skill set, perfecting content, building models and constructs, and living by a unique set of values. It's about the people and the practitioners we serve, whether they be learning leaders and managers who are charged with developing the workforce, instituting practices that enable performance, and engage with colleagues to get it right. It's about people who allow us to enter their lives, help them be better at what they've been asked to do. It's about that trust that they put in us and the desire we have to support them. It's about industry relationships. It's about connecting, supporting, and acting in such a way that together we fulfill the promises that we make. Coming to terms with what I believe about it not being about me relieves some of the anxiety I felt as I started to build out this idea. I don't have to worry about likes and impressions and trends, etc. I only have to be better at what I've chosen to do. And perhaps some of you will become better as well. If this medium impacts one person, right, one aha, one revelation, I would have completed the race, lived in my purpose. Talk about that too. So let me tell you, the race started way back when, while I was in the Navy. I showed up to boot camp like everyone else. I was excited, apprehensive, curious. I believed I could excel in the Navy. The company commander must have noticed something about me and appointed me to be the master at arms. I didn't have a clue what that meant, but he said, I can see you're trying to follow the script. I'm going to make you the company MA, Master at Arms. It wasn't a law enforcement role. It was about ensuring the other recruits paid attention, followed the rules, and behaved as expected and as required. It was about taking responsibility for order, discipline, execution, and achieving results asked of us. I wasn't in charge of anything, but I did become aware of a sense of duty, honor, and responsibility bestowed upon me. I appreciated the trust and confidence the company commanders had put in me. I refused to let them, my shipmates, or myself down. One of the Navy concepts I immediately identified with was that of Bravo Zulu. Bravo Zulu is a signal meaning well done. That's well done with regard to actions, operations, or performance. The goal for me was to always be Bravo Zulu, to always be well done, to always operate with excellence, assurance, and with diligence. I was boarded and sold out on the Navy way. Gung ho, anchors away. Aye, aye, sir. Right? I aspired to be the ideal sailor who would serve with honor and distinction. I ascended the ranks in the shortest possible time from E3 to E6 in 5.5 years. You couldn't cheat the system and do it any sooner. I was compelled to get that done. I was awarded, recognized, and encouraged. I was mentored, coached, and called on the carpet a couple of times uh, as well when it was needed. I got to see parts of the world that I only heard about. I made lifelong, cherished friendships. I got stories to share about what I learned in the Navy. That experience has influenced my life, as you can imagine, and also my career choices. The next Navy story leads me to this point in time right here. This is kind of funny. You might get a chuckle out of this. So I'm an electronics technician. That was my official designation. I was an electronics technician, trained in various pieces of electronics equipment, mostly air traffic control equipment or airport equipment, and then other things. But I was working on a piece of equipment one afternoon, and honestly, I wasn't following all the rules. At least not to the letter. Took some shortcuts. In any event, I ended up taking a shock, 17,000 volts. They estimate about 3 amps. It nearly killed me. As a matter of fact, it did. I was resuscitated on site. I spent 3 days in the hospital, came back to work, and I met with the commanding officer. And the commanding officer says, "You know, Petty Officer Gregory, if you had expired, we would have named the bay after you, the Petty Officer Gregory Memorial Electronics Bay." He said, "I'm glad we didn't have to do that." And then he went on to say, "Listen, I'm not comfortable with sending you back out to work in the Bay. Why don't you go hang out with the training petty officer for a couple of weeks?" And friends, I've been hanging out with the training petty officers and the training people and some of you ever since that day. Um, I was amazed by how much thought actually went into training and preparing people to go be sailors, to go do things. The rigor in which opportunities were applied to support a sailor's ability to do a particular job and how intentional it was. Also became aware of what the Navy was doing to keep sailors and retain them and to motivate them, to support them, to encourage them to do things that were possible within the service. I became a command career counselor as well. I helped to build training libraries at the command. Eventually, I ended up at Fleet Training Center, Norfolk, Virginia, where I attended the Navy's version of Train the Trainer School. So it was an instructor training school. My original orders said I would go there, to learn how to train and then move on to the electronics command to go teach some electronics system. Um, when I got to train the trainer school, that's when I learned the science behind training, the laws of learning, all of the great thinkers about how people learn and what you do to support their learning. I was blown away. And so my goal then became I want to teach the Navy's train the trainers. Uh, and I did. I was accepted. I ended up teaching not only train the trainer, I became the curriculum manager or something like that in succession, right? There were other great folks in front of me of curriculum development. Um, uh, TMDS, Training Materials Development System, TMDS 292 or DOD Handbook 292, right? That was this massive curriculum development model. It was powerful. I'd never seen anything so intricate and laid out so precisely in order to achieve some specific outcome for a set of people who had to go do something. It blew me away. I fell right in. Then the Navy came up with the new curriculum development model, NAVID Tray 130 series. I was a plank owner on that. So what that means is the Navy was developing this new way to create a curriculum. I supported that effort. I was a part of that piloting effort. I was one of the first people to be taught how to teach it and then how to develop curriculum with it. Man, I had found my purpose. So that accident that I had was the trajectory to get me in front of you all today. Knew what I wanted to do. But I want to tell you the day that I actually realized that this profession, this business was my purpose. I was qualifying to become this instructor. And one of the sections that we were working on at the time was interest and motivation. Like, how do you establish interest and motivation for a topic, with a group of people who you need to be all in to learn this thing so they can go do what they got to do. And remember, I'm training other instructors how to train. So this wasn't, how do you train people to turn a light bulb? This was, how do you turn people on so they can invent light bulbs or something to that effect? I was really concerned about what I was going to do. And I was preparing for it. I was studying it. And I came upon an article. Here's the deal. In April of 1899, an explosion occurred on a naval ship, USS Iowa, BB 61, during a fleet exercise in the Caribbean. That explosion killed 47 crewmen. Um, it was devastating. 47 fellow sailors lost their lives because of an explosion on a battleship. Massive, complicated, complex piece of machinery. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder what the gunner's mates instructors were thinking after that explosion. And by the way, this occurred in 1989. The Navy had published an article commemorating this years later when I was qualifying for instructor training school. So I got the article and I took it into the room with me as we started. Again, the topic was interest and motivation, how to establish that. Then I went in there and I reminded them that some years ago this occurred. And then I asked them the same question that I asked myself. What do you think the gunner's mate instructors, those people who had taught those people who had ended up losing their lives that April? Now imagine this. This is a community. As large as it is, it's still a community. The people that operate and man and attend to and maintain that were trained to do so. They went to a school. In fact, the school was, I believe, in Chicago at Great Lakes. And the instructors there take the folks who are going to operate, maintain, and care for the system. They teach those people how to do that. And the Navy prepares curriculum to teach them everything they need to know, what to do, how to do it, when, why, where. And in addition to being trained in school, they're also trained on the job to ensure the execution. I asked them, as I asked myself, what do you think those gunners mates, those instructors, were saying about this accident? And the room went silent. No one could answer that question initially, and I just left it alone. And then I prompted them. Some gunner's main instructor would say, wow, I knew that kid, Petty Officer so and so. He came through my class. He was a good kid. Another instructor said, yeah, Chief so and so was on there. I knew Chief so and so. We taught this system together. Another sailor said, I wonder if they did this, as he's referring to, the operation of some piece of equipment. And then one by one, they started to answer the question, what do you think those gunner's mate instructors are talking about? And I said to them, what you do as a trainer, as an instructor, is incredibly important. The things that come out of your mouth, right? The things that come out of your mouth, the impression that you make on those that need to learn something is long lasting. They will depend more so upon what they heard you say and do than perhaps what they read in the manual that tells them what to say and do. And they'll be grateful when what the manual says mimics and matches exactly what you said, and added with the conviction that it's necessary to execute against the mission. I convinced them that they were amongst the most powerful people in the Navy, those who taught others to go do things on behalf of this government. And they believed me. Right? It worked. And it wasn't a ploy. It's like, that's how important being a trainer is. And that was the day I understood my purpose. It was that day. I'd like to add, though, that there's a difference between understanding your purpose and living your purpose. Sure, I've done a lot of things, lots of things. I've been a lot of people. I've experimented, with many things. I'm a musician. You can tell by the background, right? I got this musical theme going. My first love, I was a musician. Um, I'm interested in a lot of other things like cosmology and physics, but this is what I care about. I will say though, I wasn't always living in my purpose. I was like existing in my purpose in there. It's just recently that, there was another gear to kick in to let me know what living in purpose means. And that's where I'm at today. So that's why I'm doing this. So that's why I'm trying to have this conversation. It would be living in my purpose, and not because it's about me, because my purpose has always been about serving others. In any event, before I go, I want to keep it real. Some, like in the community, say let's keep it 100, right? 100%. If I were going to explain this in a classroom, again, I know a lot of you know what I mean. In the classroom, I'd say, there are opportunities when you get to be like wholly authentic, like really transparent and vulnerable to the extent that you can stand it, because that's not easy. But I know over the years in this business, again, I've been doing this for a long time. I know I've made some mistakes, some errors. I didn't always get it right. I also didn't always get it wrong. But in those moments that I missed the mark, I disappointed some of you who are listening to this, those people that I call friends in this business, people that I worked for, learning leaders, people that I worked with, my peers, people that worked for me, right? I didn't always get it right. I do want to offer an apology for that. I know I messed some things up. I missed the mark. What I'm hoping, though, is that I can learn, and I have. I've learned from that. Therefore, I can be better. So I just want to say that because, again, we know each other. We're connected. Uh, Particularly those who are going to take the time to listen to this. Anyway, thanks for listening. I thought it was important that you kind of understood where this was coming from. I'm going to share a lot more about what we're going to do with this platform. Hear from you, hear from each other. Again, my thing is the synergy, the connection. How much better can that be so that we can be better at what we've been asked to do? Friends, so let me share what I have in store uh, for this podcast, for this conversation. I've conceived of a series of 16 different major topical areas. Certainly things that I'm interested in, I like to talk about, I like to hear about, that I like to learn about. Starts off, and when I say starts off, I'm just providing the list because I've already changed the order that I had in my mind. But there are things like assessments, all about assessments. I've gotten so many questions over the years about assessments, which ones to use, which ones are useful, which ones will tell me this thing versus that thing, how should I use them, etc. There's also the opportunity to talk about DEIA. Thought that was going to be my very first major series after this introductory series, in fact. I'm going to move that a little bit later. It is a critical topic. It's really important, and not because it's under attack, though that is important, but because there is so much to learn about it for real. But there's something that hasn't been done well or well enough, something that those of us who are in this space have to come to terms with in order to be successful and relevant in this conversation that, quite frankly, I believe has to continue. There's lots to know. I'm also interested in having a series just about coaching. You guys are the best. Coaching has become incredibly popular lately. Coaching has always been a viable tool for supporting performance. It's always been a really good tool. In fact, it may be the best tool, maybe not. But I'd like to hear from you coaches. I'd like to hear from folks who hire coaches for others, on behalf of others, in support of others. I'd like to hear from those who have been coached, share experiences with us. Another series that I'd like to address is that of certifications. I've got a bunch of them myself, right? I know all of you out there have certifications. You practitioners have certifications in the various disciplines that we promote. Others of you who are don't do training or not trainers or not coaches or not consultants, you have earned a plethora of different types of certifications so that you can go do your jobs. I'd like to talk about this world of certifications, so to speak, which ones to get, how they're made, why they're made, what they're supposed to do, what your experiences with them are. I'd like to hear from you. There is the whole field, right? It's almost a universe into itself, the multiverse of interpersonal skills. The real rocket science. Got another series on technical skills, right? Can't forget technical skills. There's a lot that's needed. One of the big conversations that we have now is about upskilling. Well, what does that mean, upskilling? I think it's more closely associated with the technical skills than the interpersonal skills. Anyway, that's what I'm believing. And then certainly it's not possible to have a conversation about development without having conversations about executive leadership, management leadership, and first line leadership. I'm dedicating a series to each one of those. So many of you out there, specialize in executive leadership. You work with the brightest and the best at the highest levels of corporations and government to support that team, that leadership team, to do what it is that they have to do to fulfill the promises they've made to the public, to the workforce, to constituents, to other stakeholders, and to shareholders. What is special about executive leadership? Let's have that conversation. You guys are really good at this. And then the frontline leaders, those are my favorite folks because they spend a lot of time doing like this, trying to figure it out. And often we know in this business that many people are promoted into leadership or supervisory roles because of their functional subject matter expertise, not necessarily because we believe they're going to be good at leading. And folks get hung up, they get in trouble in there. Um, and so there's a body of learning, of opportunity, of specialties that some of you have come up with to support that frontline leader, that very first opportunity to lead and manage and be responsible and accountable to and for others. I'd like to have that conversation. Then, of course, picked a series around one of my favorite topics, and that's change and transition, as in change leadership and transition management. I'm a big fan of Dr. William Bridges. I've been trained in his approach and methodology. I'm also a big fan of things like, ADKAR and ProSci, those models that suggest how we do change. Many of you specialize in that. You got the certifications, you got the certificates, and you work on change every day. So let's understand how we become better at change and transition. Big series on that. I used to have this title, Learning Technology and Operations, right? The Director of Learning Technology and Operations. So we got to talk about learning technologies. There are a lot of them out there. So many, in fact. Some really, really, really good. Some not as many reallys next to the good. And all of us, right, have experiences with these learning technologies. What do you wish were different? What do you wish could occur when you picked up the mouse and you clicked the button? What would you like to happen after that click? That would naturally lead into a conversation about AI, artificial intelligence, and the future of learning, I think. Oh man, I know you got something to say about that. I absolutely want to hear because I jumped on the AI bandwagon late and screaming. Frankly, I don't trust it. But I should trust it. And trusting it really means I don't understand it. It means there's more for me to learn. It means there's a way that I could package that trust, that I could be comfortable in its use. But I don't know what that is. I really, me, Lonnie, personally want to learn and hear about how that's going to be used. Perhaps some of you want to hear the same things. So we got this AI and the future of learning technology. Another thing that I've put in the series is performance management. Like, whoa, that's pretty direct and discrete performance management. Yes, it is, because many of us go through the performance management cycle, the performance management life cycle. We write goals, we have conversations. I know that there's work that we can do in performance management. Let's talk about performance management. Let's link that to things like high potential development, which I've isolated as an additional series to cover. I think it's important that we pay attention uh, to those within our care, within our charge, that we support their ability to grow and become those things that they aspire to. Many organizations, many companies think in terms of succession planning and those types of things. How is that accomplished? What are you guys doing out there? What's working? What do you need to improve upon? What do you wish would happen? I'd like to talk about high potential development series for that. It's going to be a series on mentoring. I've been mentored. Thank God. Mentoring is important. We understand that. I'd like to hear how you guys are doing it, how it's working, what's new, what's old, what's changing. How do you feel about it? Mentoring as a series. And then I want to hear from those of you who have achieved that level of excellence in performance because you learned something, right? I learned, therefore I can. What was it that you learned? All the things that you've learned, how that contributed to your ability to reach that state. Share with us your learning and performance journeys. Share with us those people that came into your life that helped you be better. Tell us about the really cool consultants, coaches, traders, practitioners, IO psychologists. A shout out to my man, you know who you are, IO psychologists that worked with you, that cared about you. Um, share with us, you know, that person that mentored you, that advocated for you. Share how you got to be that ultimate performer because you learned something. Those are the things that I had planned pretty much in that order. Having reached here today, there's something that I think I want to go back to and expand upon that. And that's the relationships you and I have, we all have with one another in this business. I think I want to have the first series just on relationships. There are a lot of you that I admire and care about, call friend, have learned from. And I'm sure there are you out there that have that same sentiment about those that you've worked with and helped you grow and achieve and be and believe. I want to talk about these relationships. They're important to me. And I think it's foundational to the industry that we start there with relationships. So I'd like to hear about the relationships you all enjoy with one another in this space. My next or very first real podcast after this one is with a gentleman that I just can't say enough about. I'm going to start off with that relationship. I've invited others to join me to talk about the relationships that I have with them. And I'm inviting you to come on to the show. I'd like to hear about those relationships. So that's the change. That's where we're going to start with relationships. I wouldn't be where I am without relationships. And I won't get any further than where I am without relationships. So the first series, the first several episodes are going to be about relationships. I'm hoping you'll check it out.
Welcome to iLearn, Therefore iCan, an iRIZE performance consulting podcast where we explore the world of high performance and achievement from a learning and development perspective. This platform is designed to hear from the community that built a $370 billion a year industry. Our goal is to establish a dialogue that creates alignment, synergy, and harmony among and between us. Hosted by Lonnie F. Gregory, Principal Executive Consultant at iRIZE Performance Consulting, this podcast is dedicated to the community of people who believe in the human potential for achieving excellence, the individuals who aspire to and achieve excellence, and those who enable performance.